You are now listening to Mack McCloud, The Quiet Hustle, Chapter 1, The Ride to Chi-Town. The year was 1975. The war was behind him, but the memories still rode heavy in his bones. Mack McCloud sat by the window on the Amtrak watching the flatlands pass, on his way to Chicago. Fresh out the Army after 8 years in the infantry, the silence of the train was a gift. No gunfire, no marching in orders, just the soft clatter of steel on tracks and the rustle of a worn newspaper in his lap. He tried catching up on whatever was happening in the world that kept turning without him, but his eyes drifted off the page when she appeared. She moved through the train like she floated. Tall, smooth, curves in all the right places, a walking melody. She was serving cocktails from a tray, smiling like she was paid to do, but something behind it said she was good at it too, naturally easy. Now Mack, sitting in his seat, heart thumping with urgency. He hadn't felt since ducking mortal fire in the war. The old player in him kicked in like a reflex. He coughed loud, faking, dramatic, grabbing his throat as if he were choking. She immediately rushed over and said, "Sir, are you okay?" His hand then dropped from his throat, replied with a smirk, "I am now, but not as fine as you." Her face lit up with a blush, the kind a schoolgirl might wear if her crush said something slick in the hallway. She tried to hide it behind professionalism, but it was there, the spark. They began to talk, exchange names. Hers was Peaches. He says, "Of course it was, because you're sweetest one," he teased. And she said, "I try," and she laughed. As the hours melted away, they shared jokes and stories. Peaches told him she was headed to Chicago also. Something about the way she looked at him, open but guarded, told him that she was just not another pretty face. She had history, she had heart. And Mack, he was hooked. Fresh out the war without a woman in sight for months, and now he was sitting across from a woman who looked like she stepped out of Motown Dream. He shot his shot. "How about a steak dinner when we get to the Windy City?" Peaches smiled, but shook her head softly. "I got a man. He wouldn't like that." Mack leaned back, hiding his disappointment with grace. "I understand. Still, I hope to see you again." But he wasn't done yet, though. With that smooth baritone and Army confidence, he said, "We got one more stop before Chi-Town. I watched you serve everyone else on this train. Now let me serve you." She raised the eyebrow, intrigued. "What do you mean?" He smiled and said, "May I rub your feet? You've been on them all day. Let me show you some appreciation." She laughed, half embarrassed, half tempted. "Boy, please stop." But Mack didn't stop. He kneeled down, gently removed her shoes, and massaged her tired calves. She sighed, leaning back in her seat and letting her guard down just a little more. It wasn't the touch, it was the care, it was the attention. Mack treated her like royalty, like the queen her man probably forgot she was. They talked and laughed and sat close for the rest of the ride. Every time her laugh rang out, Mack's heart pulled tighter. He was falling and falling fast. As the train pulled into Chicago, reality hit. Peaches stood, brushing off her skirt. "You sure I can't get that steak dinner?" Mack asked one last time. She smiled sadly and said, "No, I can't." Mack nodded, eyes soft. "It was a pleasure to meet you, and I won't forget you." Peaches walked away into the crowd as Mack stood still. He didn't even know her last name, but in just a few hours, she carved her name into his heart, even though it was bulletproof.